So Concord, we all know how bad that game was. That game flopped so hard that Sony pulled that from the market after what, about 2 weeks on sale? And then we learned it took 8 years to develop. But what we didn't know was how much that game cost. But there was a tweet put out today with a link to a video by a YouTube channel called Sacred Souls, I think it was, where somebody said they'd spoken to somebody who worked on the actual game Concord at Sony, and that game apparently cost 400 million US dollars to make. Oh yes, you heard that correctly.
$400 million.
But whilst I'm picking myself up off the floor after passing out from hearing that ridiculously astronomical figure, let's get straight into the actual tweet. And it quotes directly from the video, which is about 9 minutes long, and it says, "I spoke extensively with someone who worked on Concord, and it's so much worse than you think. It was internally referred to as the future of PlayStation, in quotes, with Star Wars-like potential, and a dev culture of toxic positivity halted any negative feedback." Oh god, that doesn't sound good. Making it cost 400 million. Now, I mean, Christ on a bike. That is an astronomical figure. Like, whatever way you slice and dice it, 400 million to make a game over 8 years is absolutely bonkers. That is what, 50 million a year? That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Anyway, let's dive into the video where they discuss Concord and its cost and prepare for disappointment.
I want to talk about Concord. I wasn't going to ever talk about this game again because who really gives a shit? However, and I don't do journalism really anymore, as you guys know, and we talk about this a lot. I was a journalist at one time, and I used to break a lot of stories, and these days I don't really grind like that. So the stories that I break these days are usually not usually, always people coming to me. And someone who worked on Concord reached out to me, and I verified who this person was and went through all of that and talked to this person extensively, for a long time. Ooh. And got some, I think, interesting information that I can share about Concord. And I think people will be interested about it. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because some of the assumptions that I had made about the game were dead wrong as far as how much it cost and how much Sony really lost on it. So the big thing that you really need to know here about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make.
And there it is. I mean, even when this guy says, okay, somebody from Concord contacted him directly, he verified who this person was, he spoke to them extensively, and the figure that they came back with was $400 million. I mean, let that sink in. And I've said it about 4 times already, but let that number sink in. Now, that is a loss because they did not make anywhere close to that money back. I mean, this probably explains why the PS5 Pro costs $700, pounds, whatever, $1,100, whatever dollars if you're in the US, in Canada or Australia. But Sony may be a big company, but it's, especially PlayStation revenues, are razor thin. The profit margins are razor thin. It cannot be affording to be losing 400 million just willy-nilly like that. That is an insane figure.
Up to the point that the game went into alpha state, they had already spent about $200 million on it. And it's unclear how much of that money is from probably Monsters and the original investors into the game and how much of that money was from Sony. There's this term in product development, not only with games, but really with everything. You can like manufacture a tchotchke. You guys might have heard of it. It's called minimum viability or a minimum viable product. Mm-hmm. The idea behind this, or MVP, the idea behind this is that this is like what you're trying to achieve. And it's like, once you cross this barrier, you feel comfortable selling it. It's not that it's the best it can be or that it's what it's going to be by the time you launch it, because there's all sorts of extra stuff you do to it. But like, this is the minimum viability of the product. When the game had already had $200 million spent on it and was basically in an alpha form in Q1 of 2023, from that point until the game launched, Sony spent another $200 million on it. The scuttlebutt behind the scenes about Concord is that the game was in a laughable shape when it was shown, and basically like when the alpha was ready to go and they were kind of being like, we're ready to kind of get moving towards getting this thing out in the next year or two. it was in such horrible shape that Sony felt like they needed to spend that much money again. So, 200 plus 200 to get the game to the MVP status, not to the status of it being like a great game, to get it to just viability.
That is just wild to me. Absolutely wild. So they'd already spent $200 million and the game had not even reached the MVP status. So Sony stepped in and said, we're going to sink 200 more million into this to try and get it just to the bare minimum standard where you can say that this game is at a state where we can at least now start improving on it and making it better to get to the point where, so that is, I mean, what sort of process is that with regards to game development? I mean, it already sounds like this thing was a hot mess before it even reached Sony's desk, but then Sony didn't turn around and say, well, actually, you know what, we don't want this at all. Like, why would you then sink another 200 million into this product? If I saw something like that and it was trash, I'd be like, okay, cool, have fun with that. But then I guess we don't know if there'd been any deals done behind the scenes or contracts that had been signed, but it seems a bit of a weird thing to then sink another $200 million into something that hasn't even reached the point where you can say it's at a minimum level of acceptability. Very bizarre.
Like, a major expense was having to urgently outsource much of the game to other studios to finish building the game out. And that two fundamental things were not worked on at all up to the point in which the game was shown in alpha. Onboarding, nothing about that. No, like there was nothing about how players get on, like how they make their character, all that kind of stuff, or, choose their character and get there. And monetization. Two very expensive, very specific and boutique things that happen to games like this. And so that's the first thing that I wanted to say, is that it's not only about the ongoing cost, which would be in the millions to keep the game going per month, but that the game cost about $400 million to make, soup to nuts. Sony put most of that money in, and it is not only so, because we had kind of said like this must be Sony's biggest loss ever on a game, and it is. It's the biggest game Sony's ever released from a budgetary standpoint from the first party or second party.
You heard it. The biggest release Sony has made in its history, game-wise. So we're talking bigger than God of War, bigger than Horizon Zero Dawn, bigger than Spider-Man, bigger than Spider-Man 2. This is the biggest release that Sony has made. I mean, financial cost wise, I mean, it's just insane. Like, why have you sunk this huge amount of money into a live service game? These models, the Fortnites, the PUBGs, the Overwatches, they are anomalies in industry. They are ones that, once in a blue moon, wishing on a star that they manage to hit and land, but there's the ongoing cost of it and the constant need to offer something new because the player base is so hungry. These going all in on live service, think of the games, maybe smaller games like Astrobot and other games like that 400 million could have possibly produced to critical acclaim, player base acclaim, but also could have fleshed out their release schedule so they're not releasing one major first party game or two major first party games a year. I mean, think of what that 400 million could have been spent on game-wise.
So let that sink in.
It's crazy.
And it's totally unintuitive. There are games that are in development right now at Sony, first and second party, that are more expensive than this. But as of the games that have come out so far, so think about like Spider-Man 2 and so on and so forth. We know The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million. Spider-Man 3 is going to cost about $350 million. This game costs more than that. And they lost all of it because they made no money. They made about $1 million gross revenue, and then they gave it all back. So this is a huge, multiple hundreds of millions of dollar loss. Now, the question is, why? Why did this happen?
Damn straight. That is a very, very good question. Why on earth did this happen? What is going on at Sony leadership, PlayStation leadership, that this was a business decision that was made? Why? I mean, why? I don't get it. I can't understand the logic behind it. Why would you sink huge, like astronomical amounts of money like this into something that clearly is trash? Why?
This game was heavily championed behind the scenes. Now we know this because Sony ended up, what's funny is that the game is presented in Q1 2023 as this, we're kind of getting towards the end. The game is nowhere near being done. It's in a horrible position. And then Sony buys the team. The idea behind this was, and the term apparently verbatim had been used, that Concord is the future of PlayStation. That they had such major ambition for this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony.
Really? Star Wars like? What? It's actually exhausting listening to this. If all of this, if there's even an acorn of truth in all of this, it is exhausting listening to these execs at Sony seemingly having no concept of the market and what consumers want, what gamers want. Because if you think something like Concord is going to have the potential for Star Wars, you are delusional. You are absolutely delulu.
That it can be repeatedly revisited over and over and over again, not only in cross media, but in what we were seeing. We've already kind of seen little bits of it. So the weekly story vignettes that they were going to release, and then of course the inclusion in Amazon's Secret Levels anthology, that's like just scratching the surface of it.
Funny that, actually. I wonder if that episode will still release on Secret Level on Amazon. That will be interesting if they pull it or if they just let it play out.
Ironically, the game was codenamed Chaos behind the scenes. And a major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and kind of the way the game reads and all that, a toxic positivity vibe. You weren't allowed to say anything, apparently internally, about this game. About how like something's wrong with it, character designs are not right, and so on and so forth. They really truly believe this was Herman Hulst's baby, apparently. And he internally was himself a massive champion of the game.
And there you have it. I mean, how many people have worked in an environment, an office or a shop or somewhere, you have an environment that is exactly that, toxic positivity, where the building could be on fire, but you're not allowed to say anything negative or bad about it. Your boss could be an absolute, I won't use the word, and you're not allowed to say anything about it. The company ethos, the company atmosphere, the company, brand is toxic, is horrible, but you've got to keep this positive face on. That is just, wow.
So it's not that. So the reason I'm telling you all of this, it's some interesting information, of course, but it's that I had said when people were like, Concord lost $200 million. Now people were pulling that money out because that's basically how much like some of the first party games like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, etc., kind of cost in that frame. And I was like, there's no way that it costs that much. I was saying like it cost 9 figures, probably like low $100 million, but there's no way it cost $200 million. No, it cost $400 million.
Yeah, I think that's the same reaction from everybody who's hearing this news, that it supposedly cost $400 million. Like, there is no way. You look at the end product and you think to yourself, $400 million on what? Like, what? Did somebody buy like a bunch of houses in Beverly Hills, or some expensive cars, a couple of Lamborghinis, some Ferraris, Maseratis, trips abroad or something else, and put that under the gaming budget as, I don't know, expenses or something? $400 million for what? You look at Concord and you think, where is the $400 million?
And by the way, the $400 million not included in how much it cost to buy the team.
Wow. Just when you think the story can't get any worse, it does not include what Sony has paid to buy Firewalk, I think the name of the team is. Wow.
Yeah, the big things to take away: $400 million loss. The game was in horrible shape as of 18 months ago before release. Not even monetization, no onboarding, most content not even there. The game was in such bad shape at that point that they spent the budget of it again in urgent outsourcing to get the game finished from all of these different angles over an 18-month period. Internally, the game was considered part of the future of PlayStation, with heavy cross-media references and a system of toxic positivity surrounding it that didn't allow anyone to meaningfully change the course of the game. Because if the people at the top truly believe in something, you're not going to be able to do much about that, I don't think, from the trenches.
I wouldn't even begin to speculate how much Sony paid for Firewalk. I'm not sure if that information is publicly available or not, but I couldn't even speculate. If it's not, I couldn't even speculate. It's on top of that $400 million they've spent however many millions to buy this studio. Oh my god. I don't even know what to say. I'm still in shock at the 400 million and what this guy said in his video about just the absolute state of this game. I mean, $400 million loss. The game was in such a trash state when it was shown to Sony that they decided to plow another 200 million, so the exact same budget that had already been spent on it, into this game to try and get it to an acceptable state, to get it to the MVP state as mentioned. And then on top of that, you have the toxic environment that completely stifled any creativity, completely stopped them from making any changes to the game that would maybe had made it better. You know, change the direction of the game, maybe just, you know, scale down the scope or something. No, these executives or whoever had these lofty ambitions. We're going to make this the Star Wars, we're going to make this the MCU of the gaming world, and you end up with Concord. $400 million loss, trash game, pulled from the store shelves probably in the quickest time you've ever seen a live service game get pulled. Babylon's 4 outlasted it. Foam Stars lasted it. I'm flabbergasted. I'm literally in shock at what I've just heard, and just still begs the question: what is going on at Sony? What is going on at PlayStation? Because something serious is going on. These budgets are unsustainable, absolutely unsustainable. Anyway, what do you guys think about this revelation that Concord apparently cost this much money? I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I would love to know, especially big old diehard PlayStation fans, what are your thoughts thinking of Sony dropping $400 million on the trash that was Concord? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for listening to me rant and you know, bring you this news story. I appreciate it. Smash that like button if you like the video, or dislike it if you didn't. Leave a comment down below and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next video. Cheers. Bye.